Your baby daddy is choking you out in the middle of a Chicago street. You can't breathe. You're gasping, clawing at his hands around your neck. And then you see her, his new girlfriend. She's walking toward you with something in her hand. Something black. Something cold. And in that split second, you realize this isn't just another fight about child support or custody. This is your execution. Romeca Meeks lived this nightmare on September 8, 2025. 31 years old, just dropped her son off at school, heading to work like any other Tuesday. But her baby daddy Carlos and his trigger-happy girlfriend Holly had other plans. Plans that would leave Romeca bleeding out on State Street, while bystanders pulled out their phones instead of helping. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about self-defense, restraining orders, and how far jealousy can push someone to kill. September 8, 2025 started like any other Tuesday in Chicago's South Loop. The morning rush was in full swing near Cermak Road and State Street. Commuters hurrying to catch the red line, parents doing the school run, workers grabbing their morning coffee. Just another slice of urban life in one of Chicago's busiest neighborhoods. But at exactly 9:35 a.m., that peaceful Tuesday morning exploded into chaos. Multiple 911 calls started flooding the Chicago Police Department dispatch. Gunshots. Screaming. A woman down in the street. The kind of calls that make seasoned dispatchers hold their breath. The South Loop isn't some forgotten corner of the city where violence goes unnoticed. This is downtown Chicago. Broad daylight. Witnesses everywhere. The kind of place where you'd think twice before even jaywalking, let alone committing murder. But that's exactly what makes this case so chilling. When those first responders raced toward Cermak and State, they had no idea they were about to walk into a crime scene that would expose the deadly intersection of domestic violence, jealousy, and a concealed carry permit in the wrong hands. A perfect storm that turned a busy intersection into a killing field. Romeca Meeks was just trying to be a good mother. At 31, she had her routine down to a science. Drop her young son off at school. Head to work. Pick him up later. Help with homework. The kind of simple, beautiful life that millions of single mothers live every single day across America. That Tuesday morning, she did everything right. Got her boy ready for school. Made sure he had everything he needed. Walked him to those school doors like she'd done hundreds of times before. She was probably thinking about her workday ahead. Maybe what to cook for dinner. Normal mom thoughts. But Romeca had no way of knowing that Carlos Way, her child's father, was watching, waiting. And he wasn't alone. Holly Johnson was right there with him. And she was carrying more than just attitude. She was carrying a loaded gun and a jealousy so toxic it was about to turn deadly. Romeca's last act as a free woman was being a mother. Her first act as a victim was walking away from that school. Right now, millions of mothers just like Romeca are dropping their kids off at school, completely unaware that their ex might be lurking in the shadows with his new girlfriend. But most of you watching this will finish this video and never think twice about warning the single mothers in your life about the signs of escalating domestic violence. Hit subscribe if you actually care about protecting vulnerable mothers. Then comment Mothers Matter to show you're not just here for the shock value. Or maybe you think single moms should just figure it out on their own. Go ahead and comment why you won't subscribe to a channel that could literally save lives. Because what happened next to Romeca could happen to any mother. Any day. Any time. Let's talk about Carlos Way, also known as Lozos on the streets. This is the man who helped create a beautiful child with Romeca, then turned into her worst nightmare. Carlos wasn't just your average deadbeat dad who skips child support payments. No, this man was so dangerous, so threatening, that Romeca had to get a restraining order against him. Think about that for a second. A restraining order means a judge looked at evidence and said, "This man is a legitimate threat to this woman's safety." It's not something you get because someone hurt your feelings. It's a legal document that says, stay away from this person or face serious consequences. But here's the thing about restraining orders that nobody wants to admit. They're just pieces of paper. They can't stop a bullet. They can't prevent a chokehold. And they definitely can't control a man who's already decided that if he can't have you, nobody can. Carlos had that restraining order hanging over his head, But on September 8th, 2025, he decided that piece of paper meant absolutely nothing. He was about to prove just how useless our legal system can be when a man is determined to destroy the mother of his child. Now meet Holly Johnson, the new woman in Carlos's life, who thought she was getting a man, but really signed up to become an accomplice to murder. Holly wasn't just some innocent bystander who got caught up in her boyfriend's drama. This woman made a choice to arm herself and insert herself into a situation that had nothing to do with her. Holly had a concealed carry permit, which means she passed background checks, took classes, and convinced the state of Illinois that she was responsible enough to carry a deadly weapon in public. The system trusted her with the power of life and death. But here's what those background checks can't measure: jealousy, insecurity, and the willingness to kill another woman over a man. Think about the psychology here. Holly could have stayed in the car. She could have told Carlos to handle his own business. She could have driven away when things got heated. Instead, she made the calculated decision to get out of that vehicle with her gun and involve herself in Carlos's vendetta against his baby mama. Holly Johnson wasn't protecting herself that morning. She was protecting her territory, and she was willing to commit murder to keep it. Picture the perfect storm of toxicity. You've got Carlos, a man so controlling and violent that the courts had to legally ban him from his baby mama. Then you've got Holly, a woman so insecure about her man's past that she's willing to kill for him. And caught in the middle is Romeca, just trying to co-parent and live her life. This wasn't some spontaneous crime of passion. This was a toxic triangle that had been building pressure for months, maybe years. Carlos's rage at losing control over Romeca. Holly's jealousy over sharing her man with his child's mother. Two dangerous people feeding off each other's worst instincts until violence became inevitable. Most of you have seen this exact toxic triangle before. The controlling ex, the jealous new girlfriend, the vulnerable mother caught between them. But you'll watch this and learn nothing about recognizing these deadly patterns in your own circle. Subscribe if you're actually paying attention to the warning signs, or comment why pattern recognition doesn't matter to you. 9:35 a.m. That's when Chicago's emergency dispatch system lit up like a Christmas tree. The first call came in frantic, breathless. Shots fired on State Street. There's a woman down. Then another. Oh my God, someone just got shot in broad daylight. Then another.
She's the one who shot her. Restraining order, but she shot her. The gun in the car. The gun in the car. Oh my fucking God! The baby in the car. How you feel? She just dropped her. Get up. You scared as hell, right? Scared as hell. She's scared as hell. Scared as hell. That is not self-defense. You were trying to shove her in the car, bro. You're throwing her in the car, bro. What are you talking about? You had her in a headlock. When you shot her, Brody, I was there. I'll write a statement.
I want her arrested. There's a fucking gun on the street.
Yeah, Terrell and Tanya, still really heavy police presence here near Cermak and State. You could see that police have taped off a portion of the area. Right now, detectives are surrounding a white sedan that appears to be connected to this incident. Chicago police saying that early this morning around 9:30 there was a fight between two women. That scene unfolding here near State and Cermak. One of the women allegedly pulled out a gun and shot the other woman in the face. The 31-year-old victim was taken to the hospital and later died. Now the suspect has been taken into custody, and Chicago police say this is still a very ongoing investigation. So once again, this taking place here near Cermak in State, still very active as we speak, and we'll get you more information as soon as we get that. But for now, we're live in the South Loop. Lisette Nunez, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. Back to you guys.
Send ambulances now. She's bleeding everywhere. Within minutes, the Chicago Police Department was fielding multiple 911 calls from the same intersection. Cermak Road and State Street had turned into a war zone, and terrified witnesses were all saying the same thing. A woman had been gunned down in the middle of the street during morning rush hour. The dispatchers could hear the chaos in the background of these calls. Car horns blaring as traffic came to a standstill. People screaming. The unmistakable sound of a city intersection that had just witnessed something unthinkable. Emergency responders were racing toward the scene, but they had no idea they were about to walk into evidence of one of the most cold-blooded executions Chicago had seen in years. The witnesses who called 911 that morning will never forget what they saw. Picture this. You're driving to work, maybe stuck in typical Chicago traffic, when suddenly you see a man and woman in what looks like a heated argument. Nothing too unusual for a big city, right? People fight. People yell. You keep driving. But then the argument escalates. The man grabs the woman. Not just a push or a shove, but a full-on physical assault right there in the street. Witnesses later told police they saw Carlos wrap his arms around Romeca's neck in a choke hold that lifted her feet off the ground. She was struggling, gasping, fighting for air while cars drove by. That's when Holly Johnson stepped out of the vehicle. Multiple witnesses saw her approach the struggling pair with something in her hand. A gun. In broad daylight, with dozens of people watching, Holly Johnson drew her weapon and aimed it at a woman who was already being strangled by her baby daddy. The witnesses described a scene so brutal, so calculated, that even seasoned Chicago cops were shaken. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was an execution with an audience, and everyone was too shocked to intervene. Imagine being trapped in your worst nightmare. Carlos had Romeca Meeks in a choke hold so tight that her feet were literally off the ground. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't scream. She couldn't run. All she could do was claw at his arms wrapped around her throat while the world watched. This wasn't some wrestling move or playful roughhousing. This was a grown man using his physical strength to completely immobilize the mother of his child. Romeca was 5'something, probably 130 pounds soaking wet. Carlos had her in a position where she was completely helpless, completely vulnerable. And that's exactly when Holly Johnson made her move. While Romeca was gasping for air, unable to defend herself, unable to escape, Holly saw her opportunity. The woman who was supposed to be strangled was now the perfect target. Trapped, defenseless, at point-blank range. Carlos didn't just hold Romeca for his own violence. He held her for Holly's. Holly Johnson didn't hesitate. She didn't warn Romeca to back off. She didn't fire a warning shot. She walked up to a woman who was already being choked unconscious and pulled that trigger at point-blank range. The first bullet hit Romeca in the chin. The second tore through her thigh. Multiple gunshot wounds to a woman who couldn't even lift her hands to protect herself because Carlos still had her in that death grip. This wasn't self-defense. This wasn't a struggle for the gun. This was a calculated execution carried out while the victim was completely immobilized. Holly Johnson looked into Romeca's eyes and chose murder. Dozens of people watched Romeca get executed and did nothing to help. Just like most of you will watch this video and do nothing to help other women facing domestic violence. Subscribe if you're not just another bystander, or comment why you think someone else should handle it. When Chicago PD and paramedics arrived at Cermak Road and State Street, they found a scene that would haunt them for years. Romeca Meeks was lying in the middle of the street, blood pooling around her head and leg, barely clinging to life. The busy intersection had turned into a crime scene with dozens of witnesses standing around in shock. The paramedics immediately went to work, but they knew they were fighting against time and devastating injuries. A gunshot wound to the chin, another to the thigh. These weren't warning shots or accidental discharges. These were kill shots delivered at close range to vital areas. Traffic was backed up for blocks as police cordoned off the area. Rush hour commuters found themselves trapped in their cars, forced to witness the aftermath of an execution. The blood on the asphalt told the story of a woman who had simply been trying to live her life when violence found her. First responders see a lot in Chicago, but this level of brutality in broad daylight shook even the veterans. Here's what makes this case even more disturbing. After Holly Johnson executed Romeca Meeks in cold blood, she didn't run. She didn't panic. She didn't even try to hide the evidence. She just stood there, calm as you please, waiting for the police to arrive. When officers got to the scene, they found Holly Johnson still at the location with her weapon nearby. She had made no attempt to flee, no attempt to dispose of the gun, no attempt to claim it was an accident. She was just there, like she was waiting for her arrest. This is the behavior of someone who believed She was completely justified in what she had just done. Holly Johnson had convinced herself that murdering another woman in broad daylight was somehow the right thing to do. She was so confident in her actions that she stuck around to face the consequences. That level of cold calculation is what separates this from a crime of passion. This was premeditated murder carried out by someone who felt zero remorse. The paramedics rushed Romeca to Stroger Hospital, but the damage was too severe. Multiple gunshot wounds at point-blank range had torn through her body, and despite the medical team's best efforts, there was nothing they could do. Somewhere in that hospital, Romeca Meeks took her final breath. The woman who had kissed her son goodbye just hours earlier was gone. The mother who was just trying to get to work on a Tuesday morning had become another statistic in Chicago's violence epidemic. Her family would never get to say goodbye. Her son would never see his mother again, all because two toxic people decided that their drama was worth more than her life. Romeca had a restraining order that was supposed to protect her, but the system failed her when it mattered most. Now Holly Johnson sits in custody, while Romeca's family plans a funeral instead of a birthday party. Most of you will watch this and never question how our justice system lets dangerous people slip through the cracks. Subscribe if you believe the system needs to do better for victims like Romeca. Then comment justice failed her. Or maybe you think restraining orders work just fine. Go ahead and explain why you won't subscribe to hold our courts accountable. Because paper protection clearly wasn't enough to save Romeca's life. When the news first broke, some reports suggested this might have been self-defense. Holly Johnson's legal team was probably already crafting a narrative about a woman protecting herself from an aggressive situation. But then Romeca's family spoke up, and they completely destroyed that lie. Romeca's cousin went on Channel 2 Now and delivered a statement that should make your blood boil. She said, and I quote, "This is my cousin, and what's being reported is not accurate. He was physically fighting my cousin when his girlfriend got out of the car and shot her. This was not an act of self-defense, and Romeca was not fighting over him." Let that sink in. Romeca wasn't even fighting over Carlos. She wasn't trying to win him back or cause drama with his new girlfriend. She was literally just existing as the mother of his child, and that was apparently enough to warrant a death sentence. The family made it crystal clear that this wasn't some love triangle gone wrong or a catfight that escalated. This was a premeditated attack on a woman who was already being physically restrained by her abuser. Holly Johnson didn't shoot in self-defense. She shot to kill a defenseless woman. Here's the part that should terrify every woman watching this. Romeca Meeks did everything right. She recognized that Carlos Way was dangerous. She went through the legal system. She got that restraining order that was supposed to keep him away from her. She followed all the rules that society tells women to follow when they're being threatened by violent men. And none of it mattered. That restraining order might as well have been written in disappearing ink. Carlos violated at the moment he put his hands on Romeca that morning, and there were no consequences until it was too late. This is the harsh reality that domestic violence survivors face every single day. The system gives them a piece of paper and tells them they're protected, but when push comes to shove, that paper can't stop a chokehold. It can't stop a bullet. It can't stop two people who have decided that your life doesn't matter. Romeca trusted the system to protect her, and the system let her die. As if losing Romeca wasn't dramatic enough, her family had to watch strangers turn her murder into entertainment. Within hours of the shooting, graphic videos of Romeca's final moments started circulating on social media. People were sharing footage of a woman being executed, like it was just another viral video to scroll past. Romeca's sister had to make a public plea begging people to stop sharing these videos. Imagine having to ask the internet to show basic human decency toward your murdered family member. She had to literally beg strangers to respect her sister's memory and stop treating her death like content. But the damage was already done. Thousands of people had already seen Romeca's most vulnerable, terrifying moments. Her son will grow up knowing that his mother's murder was turned into social media entertainment. Her family will forever live with the knowledge that their loved one's death became a spectacle for people's timelines. This is what we've become as a society. Murder isn't tragedy anymore. It's content. Romeca's family is begging people to stop sharing videos of her murder. But most of you have probably already seen similar footage and shared it without thinking twice about the victim's loved ones. Subscribe if you believe murder victims deserve dignity even in death. Then comment, "Respect the dead," to show you won't treat violence like entertainment. Or maybe you think viral murder videos are just part of social media now. Go ahead and comment why you refuse to take responsibility for what you share. Because every time you share that content, you're participating in a family's worst nightmare. Let's talk about the warning signs that were flashing red long before Romeca Meeks ended up dead on State Street. Carlos Way didn't just wake up one morning and decide to become a killer. This kind of violence escalates over time, and there are always signs that everyone chooses to ignore. First red flag, a restraining order. When a woman goes to court to legally ban her baby daddy from contacting her, that's not drama. That's desperation. That's a woman who has exhausted every other option and is literally begging the system to protect her from someone she's genuinely afraid of. Second red flag, violation of boundaries. The fact that Carlos was even present that morning shows he had zero respect for legal consequences or Romeca's safety. Men who violate restraining orders are telling you exactly who they are. They're saying that your safety, your peace of mind, and your legal rights mean nothing to them. Third red flag, bringing a new partner into the conflict. When Carlos involved Holly in his vendetta against Romeca, he was escalating the situation to a dangerous level. Now you've got two people feeding off each other's toxicity instead of one person who might eventually calm down. Here's the uncomfortable truth about restraining orders that nobody wants to discuss. They're basically legal wishes. You're asking a violent person to voluntarily stay away from you. And if they don't comply, maybe the police will show up in time to help. Maybe. The average response time for police in Chicago is 8 to 12 minutes. Do you know how much damage a determined abuser can do in 8 minutes? Ask Romeca Meeks. Oh wait, you can't, because she's dead. Restraining orders work great against people who respect the law and fear consequences. But the kind of man who puts his hands on the mother of his child isn't exactly concerned about legal paperwork. Carlos Way looked at that restraining order and saw it as a challenge, not a deterrent. The system failed Romeca because it treated her abuser like a reasonable person who would follow rules. But reasonable people don't strangle women in broad daylight while their girlfriends execute them. Now add a concealed carry permit to this toxic mix, and you've got a recipe for murder. Holly Johnson wasn't just jealous of Romeca. She was armed and jealous, which is the most dangerous combination you can imagine. Jealousy makes people irrational. It makes them see threats where none exist. It makes them believe that eliminating the competition is somehow justified. But when that jealous person has legal access to a deadly weapon, irrationality becomes lethal. Holly didn't just want Romeca out of the picture. She had the means to make it happen permanently. That concealed carry permit gave her the power to turn her jealousy into murder. Every single warning sign was there. The restraining order, the boundary violations, the escalating threats. But everyone around Romeca missed them or chose to ignore them. Most of you know someone in a toxic relationship right now, but you'll finish this video and never check on them. Subscribe if you're actually going to recognize these red flags in real life. Then comment, "I'll watch for the signs." Or maybe you think it's not your business when someone's being abused. Go ahead and explain why you won't get involved. Because your silence could be someone's death sentence. Holly Johnson is currently sitting in a Chicago jail cell, charged with first-degree murder in the execution of Romeca Meeks. The Chicago Police Department's Area 3 detectives are building what appears to be an airtight case against her. They have multiple witnesses, recovered the murder weapon, and Holly herself remained at the scene like she was proud of what she'd done. But here's what's really going to determine whether Romeca gets justice. The prosecution has to prove that this wasn't self-defense, despite Holly's concealed carry permit. They have to show the jury that a woman being held in a chokehold by her baby daddy wasn't a threat that justified lethal force.